What's up, pet people? My name's Lexia and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be different than the past couple ones that I've done, and that is because today I'm going to finally sit down here and tell you about the story of how I got Monty, who is my rescue ball python who I adopted from her previous living conditions, and I'll go into all of that later. But there will be a quick preface before we get into the video. So anyway, yeah, today we're just going to talk about Monty and how she came into my care and the work I've done to get her to where she is today. So if you're interested, please keep watching. Okay, so before I get into the actual nitty-gritty of the situation and talk about exactly the type of poor living conditions and just everything that Monty has gone through, I would like to do a quick little disclaimer and tell you that in no way, shape, or form do I support you going after, messaging, or just trying to contact the people at this university who were in charge of her prior to me being there. They had no idea of any of the type of care that was required to properly care for Monty or any of the other snakes that were there prior to me being there. Fortunately, Monty was the only one there in my care until I brought Wilbur and my turtle to be on display at the university as well. Before COVID happened, I was going to expand the reptile program with the university, but unfortunately once COVID happened, the university decided to shut down that whole little section of the department anyway, and that is how Monty came into my care. But once again, I do not want anyone going after the people. I will not be naming the university for a very specific reason, to ensure that they are not bothered. In no way, shape, or form do I hold them accountable, because they were told the information as to how to care for Monty by someone who is uneducated, and they followed that person and believed them to be true. So again, not holding them accountable, instead holding the person who told them how to care for Monty accountable. But they were no longer at the university whenever I got there, so I do not want the blame to be put on the people who were in charge and the people who I worked under at all. So now that that is covered, I will get into the video. Okay guys, so starting the video, the actual video part where I talk about Monty, I would like to say again that I adopted her from the university I attended, and in no way, shape, or form am I saying go after these people or anything like that. It was just a whole giant mess of uneducated people trying to do the best that they could with the information they were given, and unfortunately that led to Monty being severely malnourished, dehydrated. She had so many stuck sheds, and I'll get into that with pictures and more explanations later. But I genuinely don't know how old Monty is. It was put in a newspaper clipping. I still have the clipping, but I am not going to hold it up and show you. Here, it's this laminated newspaper clipping. I'm not going to show you the front because I do want to mark some things out before I show it to you. I'll insert that photo here. But Monty apparently was at the university as early as 1986. That makes her far older than I am. And that also led me to wonder how long she had been in these conditions. There was another snake and some other animals at the university, but as I said, they were not there during my time. They were gone before I was, and it's honestly a miracle that Monty had not passed or had not been given away. I'm so glad to have been able to work with her and care for her. But getting on to how I got to work with her, I had started attending this university in the fall of 2017. I graduated high school spring of 2017, started this university in the fall, and I graduated this past December in 2020, so I'd been there 3 years, and full 3 years. And my first year, I did not spend a ton of time in the building where she was kept. Unfortunately, and kind of fortunately, I guess, because I would have been upset seeing that every day, but unfortunately, it took me until fall of 2018 to be able to really go look at the enclosure and look at her living conditions, just because I did see it almost every day, and it was about November. I decided I was tired of seeing this poor snake, this poor ball python, be stretched out in her way too large enclosure with nothing but a very sad repti carpet, one heat lamp that had not been changed out, and God knows how long. When I asked them, they said they didn't know. The heat lamp hadn't been changed out God knows how long. There was this way too large tub for her to soak in, and then also the lamp was so far up from the bottom of the enclosure that it was just damn near impossible, excuse my language, for her to get any heat whatsoever. And yeah, it took me, from August until November of seeing that to decide I wanted to do something to change it. And I talked to my boyfriend, who's now my husband, and I was like really frustrated, and at the time I was not thinking logically or what would be in the best interest for Monty down the line. Basically, I just put down I was like, I want to make a petition. I want to get her out of the school's care. Like, they're not caring for her. They're doing this wrong. They're doing this wrong. Like, all of the things that I immediately saw were wrong, I wanted to change. And it took me about a week to talk to, my family and my boyfriend, and to realize that maybe there was a better way of going about it. So what I did was I went to, in late November of 2018, I went to the biology lab director. At the time, she still is. She's a wonderful person. I love her so much. She was in charge of Monty before I was. Once again, on false information, she was doing the best she could. And whenever I went to her, she was very honest with me, and I was very honest with her. I went to her, I was super nervous. I was like, knock on the door, she answers, I'm like, hi, your snake is not being taken care of properly, like this, you need to do this and this wrong. It looks like it might also have a deficiency of vitamin D, like da da da. And I was I could have stood my ground better to get my point across, but I definitely had not done anything like that before. And I was very nervous. I don't know why, because the worst thing that could have happened is they said no. But to me, that was the worst thing that could have happened for this reptile. And I was like, I will volunteer to take care of her. Please just let me take care of her. And this wonderful woman looked at me and goes, I'll do you one better. You can work with her. If you know about snakes, I will pay you to take care of her. And I was like, oh, well, that turned out better than I could have imagined. And once I started explaining it to the people who were working with her, they all immediately started feeling so much worse. They listened to me. They took my advice. They let me do what I could with the abilities they were given to let me do it. So by that, I mean there was me, there were the other stockroom workers, because I also ended up working in the lab as a lab assistant during this time, just to kind of supplement and give me some more hours. We were watching over Monty. What would happen is I would take one of them down there to help me because the water bin was so big I couldn't lift it on my own. And finally that following spring I was like, you need to let me change some things. Like, this enclosure is not adequate for her at all. A lot of things need to change. It's not good for her to keep her like this, and it's a miracle she's still alive. And my main boss, the biolab director, said, yes, that's fine, but she also had another 2 people she had to check with. There was the dean of the sciences, and then there was, of course, the president overall. So there were certain things and certain steps that were taken with things such as buying the mice and buying everything for that, because they had a small budget, and I didn't realize how small of a budget until we discussed that, but I'll get into that later. I was skeptical of what they were feeding her, with how skinny she was, with how underweight she was. I was skeptical, but I was like, okay, show me what you do to feed her. And when I tell you that I threw a fit when I saw what they were feeding her, I mean, I threw a fit. Like, They were feeding her 2 of the small feeder mice from, feeder mice from there. I don't normally complain about. That's fine if that's what you're given. I would prefer you not to get them from there, but it is what it is. And they were feeding 2 of those to a full-grown female ball python a week. 2 of those a week. That was nowhere near enough food for her, and half the time she wouldn't eat both of them. They would just leave the live mouse in the enclosure for hours at a time. The changes that needed to be made, I made sure were made quickly, as quickly as we could. So whenever I pointed out that this is not what she needs to be fed, this is not as frequently as she needs to be fed, like, this is wrong, we need a new light, we need a new substrate because this won't hold humidity. We live in West Texas, which is where I used to live. She's so dry, she has stuck sheds on her, I just kept naming everything. And that's when I found out about the budget. So I said all these things that need to be changed, and she's like, okay, yes, we can do that, but possibly not all at once. We might have to do it in stages. I was like, why? Explain why. And it's because the school did not find it that we needed to spend as much money on Monty as I was asking them to. So we ordered the mice, we ordered jumbo mice from Lane Labs, and I was able to start feeding her those. And it took a couple of weeks to get there. Of course, I was thinking of other ways I could help start getting her life back on track because, as I said, these stuck sheds were terrible. She had so many eye caps, it was terrible. So I had in the room my resources that I was given. I had some humidifiers, like actual home humidifiers. So what I did is it would be about 3 to 5 hours. Every 3 to 5 hours, I would go in there, check if the humidifier was still going. I had 2 humidifiers in there, and I would fill them both with warm water, and then the heat would not only help her have the correct temperature in the enclosure, but the humidity had started helping her be able to shed. Before I got her to where she is now, her sheds would come off constantly. Like, she was constantly losing little bits of skin. She couldn't see properly. She was so dull. She had little pieces stuck on her at all times. And it genuinely took a full year, maybe even a year and a half, really, till this last winter of 2020 for her to not have stuck sheds and for her to be able to, sorry, my cat is messing with stuff again, to be able to do a nice clean shed, and not to have retained eye caps, and not to look like she was starving. It took so long and so much of my time and effort, which I didn't mind at all, to be able to do this. So, flash forward to March 2020, spring break, or what was supposed to be spring break and ended up being the longest break of our lives due to the pandemic. Anyway, March 2020, I was, I went the day before our spring break to take care of her. And then my bosses started talking, right? Oh my god, my cat is scratching his ear behind the camera. Serious. Anyway, so my bosses were talking. They're like, hey, this pandemic thing, I'm scared they're going to shut down the university. We need to have a backup plan. We need to talk about what to do in case this happens. And immediately I was like, I will take Monty. They're like, okay, that might be able to work, but what do you need? I'm like, I don't have an enclosure set up for her. I need a little more time. How soon do you think it's going to close? And at the time, we were like, oh, might be a month, might be a little more. Middle of spring break, the university is like, oh, we're shutting down for a week. And during that week is possibly the most stressed I have ever been in my life because of what the plan was for Monty. And the plan was, they had no plan. they were going to have someone possibly come in and look and take care of her once a week or once every 2 weeks. So there was no way to ensure she would have fresh, clean water. There was no way to ensure that her lights were turning on at the right time. And I had them on a timer. I had everything on regulators. But I also had Wilbur at the school because, as I said, I was trying to expand the reptile educational program. I was actually going to start doing programs with the younger kids school that was attached to the university. I was going to start doing animal education programs and talking to them about Wilbur because they are a native species to, West Texas. And I was going to be like, hey, just so you know, like, go on about different snakes and how snakes aren't scary and bad and things like that. And I was really excited to start that, but once spring break hit, I realized that probably wasn't going to happen. And once spring break hit and they were talking about shutting down the school, they told me I wouldn't be allowed on the university anymore. So I started panicking because I'm like, well, my reptiles are there. 2 of my reptiles. I had a turtle. He's still in Texas. I've touched base on this a few times, but I had a turtle named Tony. He was an ornate box turtle. He is an ornate box turtle. And then I had Wilbur at the school. And I had Wilbur's enclosure at the school, and I had Tony's enclosure there and ready to, I had it at home ready for him to go back into in case I needed to bring him home ever. But I didn't have anything set up for Monty. So I asked for more time, and they're like, yeah, okay. And then when they realized they were shutting down, they're like, no one's going to be allowed, and they might be able to come once a week, every other week, things like that. And I was like, well, what if you guys shut down completely? What if the school shuts down completely? And it was in that moment, it was in that moment I realized that they were just going to let Monty possibly starve or run out of water, and they weren't going to put forth the effort to have someone go in and take care of her if it wasn't part of the janitorial disinfecting crew for the school. They weren't really willing to let anyone else be there and take care of her or my other reptiles. And I got very upset very quickly. So I did what I thought would be best, and I said, let me have her, I'll figure it out. And then my amazing boss said, no, we're gonna drain the account. We're gonna drain the expenses account for the reptile program, and we're gonna get her an enclosure. So I did what was necessary. I was like, cool, I now have an open budget, let me talk to my people. So I went and messaged Custom Cages because their enclosures are so great. As you guys know, I had the Big Vision enclosure for my Honduran girl who's still back in Texas, and I talked to them and I was like, hey, here's the situation. I need this quickly. Here's what I need it for. Do you think we could do it? And because I worked for the school, it was tax exempt, which was great because I was in the head charge of a reptile program. It helped a lot, and I'm gonna forever be thankful for Custom Cages being able to help me out in a crunch and just being there for me and providing, such great quality enclosures, such as the one she's in now, which is the Vision enclosure. She does so good in it. It holds the humidity so well. Like, Monty is just thriving, and I'm forever grateful for Custom Cages and what they did. And I'm forever grateful for the biolab director at the university I used to go to because she understood how much I love animal education and how much I love